Hello, I'm Clarence Horton. On behalf of Cabarrus County and all the persons and organizations who work to preserve her heritage and her history, welcome to another segment of Historical Moments. This is the second segment in our study of the historical markers of Cabarrus County as they tell the stories of the persons and events who have shaped our history and also give us a thumbnail sketch of the history of our county. In the first segment, we dealt with some of the earlier markers with our settlers coming down the Indian trading path to the formation of the great Presbyterian and Lutheran and Reformed churches. Today's segment will deal more with events which occurred just prior to and after the Great Civil War, and then the events which shaped our textual history up until the death of Charles A. Cannon. We're glad you could join us. Settle back now as we study again the historical markers of the county. Our early German settlers were not only great farmers, they were great artisans and worked in wood and in stone. One of the best of them, a German architect and builder named Jacob Steyerwalt, built one of the finest surviving examples of Greek architecture in the South when he completed his plantation home in the northwestern part of Cabarrus County in 1821. That house, named Mill Hill, was built near Mill Creek, where the old Templeton grist mill continued to work. On the Mill Hill campus, there soon grew up a sawmill, a cotton gin, a wool carding establishment, and many other local establishments of importance, including a post office. For more than a century, Mill Hill was the center of social and business life in its area of the county. A Mill Hill historical marker is located on the old Mooresville Road near its intersection with Steyerwalt Road west of Kannapolis. By the middle of the 19th century, Lutherans in North Carolina had grown concerned that their young, gifted men were leaving North Carolina to attend seminary and then remaining in other states to preach. And it was becoming increasingly difficult to find trained ministers for Lutheran congregations in North Carolina. They resolved, therefore, to build a school which would help train young Lutheran ministers, and in 1853, the North Carolina College opened in Mount Pleasant. That college furnished not only leaders for Lutheran ministries, but also furnished civic and political leaders throughout the state. The North Carolina College flourished until about 1903, when it began operating as a Lutheran junior college, remained in operation until 1933, when financial difficulties caused by the Depression led to its closure. An historical marker, which gives us the location of the old school, is still located near the intersection of Main Street and North Carolina 73 in present-day Mount Pleasant. A companion marker on North Carolina 73 in Mount Pleasant is located about a block north of the old location for a Lutheran seminary school for girls. That school, which was dedicated to the proposition of not only furnishing young women with a sound education, but also training them to strive for the good and the truthful and the beautiful, also flourished in Mount Pleasant during the same period of time that the seminary for boys was in operation there. School for Girls opened in 1859 and continued, despite some setbacks during the war between the states, to educate young women until after the turn of the century. In 1911, the school experienced a great fire which destroyed its principal buildings, but it was rebuilt and reopened the following year and continued in operation until about 1927, when worsening economic times and competition from nearby girls' schools in Charlotte led to its closure. Following the surrender of General Robert E. Lee's forces at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, Confederate President Jefferson Davis, members of his cabinet, and members of his bodyguard traveled south toward the comparative safety of the states of the Deep South. On the evening of April 18, 1865, they made their camp at a section north of Concord, which we now call Wilmar Park. Riders came to the home of Victor Barringer, which was located on North Union Street in Concord, to ask if President Davis could spend the night. Major Barringer was happy to receive Davis, and his wife Maria offered not only to allow the members of Davis's company to spend the night, but to share supper with them and take breakfast the next morning before traveling on their way to nearby Charlotte. Although a large number of Davis's bodyguards remained at the camp in the Wilmar Park section, a company of men and several of his closest associates accompanied him to the Barringer home, which was located on the present site of the Concord branch of the public library, where they spent the night. They were regaled at supper by a ham of Major Barringer's own curing, along with fresh vegetables and a tipsy fruit pudding, and proclaimed it the best meal they had ever eaten, while Mrs. Barringer modestly denied that, saying that it must be the length of the journey, which had added sauce to the meal. They spent the night. The president played a short chess game with the young man of the house, Mr. Barringer's son. Confederate President Davis being distracted, the young man reported later that he was able to easily defeat him at chess. The next morning, the men arose early, breakfasted with the Barringers, and left on their way to Charlotte, where the Confederate cabinet had its last meetings. That site is now marked with an historical marker to commemorate the stay of Confederate President Jefferson Davis in the town of Concord on the evening of April 18, 1865. The end of the war in 1865 brought devastation and despair to the southern states. It also brought about the emancipation of the enslaved people and a complete change in the social and economic life of the South. As a part of that change, the Northern Presbyterian Church, through the Freedmen's Bureau, sent missionaries to the South to help establish schools and churches for people of color who were recently freed. One of those remarkable men, a man named Luke Dorland, came to Concord in 1867 with the mission of establishing a school which would help train young women of color. He began to find support among the local people here. He also worked with local churches, helping to establish separate congregations for black people in some cases, including the historic Belafonte Presbyterian Church. By 1870, Mr. Dorland's work was far enough along that they were able to secure a charter from the state of North Carolina and established a seminary for young women at Concord. The first name given to the seminary was the Scotia Seminary, and it proceeded to educate young women until 1930. In 1930, Scotia Seminary merged with Barber Memorial College of Anniston, Alabama, which closed during that year and which transferred its remaining assets to Scotia Seminary. The college continued to furnish qualified graduates to the community until 1954, when its charter was revised to allow people of all races and colors and of both sexes to attend Barber Scotia College. Although the college has been beset in recent years with problems of finances and accreditation, it's struggling to regain its former prominence and to again offer a full curriculum. In the meantime, it's proud of its record of offering distinguished alumni, qualified persons in business, social, and political areas to its community, and has pledged itself to continue that mission in the future. After the end of the war in 1865, the South began to move to an economy that was going to be grounded more in manufacturing than solely in agricultural pursuits. A gifted businessman named Captain John Milton Odell saw the promise of the land in Concord and in the small textile mill at the end of Union Street, and resolved to reopen the mill and to build a textile plant based on that early effort. Captain Odell bought the textile mill at foreclosure in 1877, proceeded to more than double it in size to add looms, and within a few years was turning out quality textile products which were being sold throughout the South. His young protege, a young cotton merchant named James William Cannon, also saw all that was going on in the textile industry because he worked buying cotton, saw that it was spun into yarn in the South but was sent north to be processed and then repurchased as much more expensive cloth. Mr. Cannon determined that he wanted to found a vertical enterprise where cotton was taken from the field, brought to his mills, carded, spun, and sold to people, again in the South, creating jobs for Southerners and creating profits for Southern businessmen. Because of his standing with Northern cotton buyers, he was able to get financing, and in 1887, he chartered his first mill, which he built on Franklin Street in Concord. By 1888, that mill had begun turning out quality cloth, known throughout the world as Cannon cloth. Mr. Cannon saw the market for cloth weakening as people began to do less and less home sewing, and branched out into towels, soon becoming one of the leader producers of quality, affordable towels throughout the world. His mills continued to expand, and he needed room for more giant towel mills to meet production. He had had a dream for many years of building a model mill town where his mills would be surrounded by affordable and decent housing, by quality recreational and educational opportunities, and by a good business district. He found that in northern Cabarrus County. In 1905, Mr. Cannon began to accumulate options on land in northern Cabarrus and southern Rowan County. He quickly accumulated options on more than 1,000 acres and began to exercise those options. By 1906, he was ready to begin surveying the land and laying the foundations for his giant textile mills, around which he would build the city of Kannapolis. Mr. Cannon died in 1921 at the head of mills which were turning out products which were known for their quality throughout the entire world. An historical marker originally dedicated to Mr. Cannon's memory was erected in 1954 on US 29 in Mecklenburg County, just a few miles from his Mecklenburg County home place. In 1992, however, as a part of the Cabarrus County Bicentennial, that marker was removed and rededicated to the memory of James William Cannon at a location on Cannon Boulevard, appropriately enough, in the city of Kannapolis, across from Carolina Memorial Park. Although Captain John M. Odell has not been honored to this time for his role in pioneering textile manufacturing in Cabarrus County, his distinguished son, W.R. Odell, has had a historical marker erected in his memory. Senator W.R. Odell was not only a senator from this area, he was a friend of education and supported public education in Cabarrus County throughout his entire life. Odell School is named after Senator Odell. A marker honoring him is now erected on North Church Street, only a block away from the site of his home, which was across the street from his mills on Buffalo Street and is on the northwestern corner of the intersection of North Union and Buffalo Streets on the present site of his beloved Forest Hill Methodist Church. Another remarkable businessman of J.W. Cannon's generation has been honored by an historical marker to his memory erected in 1987, and later by having a major road in Concord named after him. Warren C. Coleman was born into slavery in 1848, but persevered through sheer hard work and determination, and with the help of his devoted wife, who assisted him in his businesses. Mr. Coleman ran a general store in Concord, North Carolina, which was frequented by both white and black residents, and he also began to invest at an early age in property in Concord. Later in life, he owned more than 100 rental houses in Concord itself. It was rumored that he was the wealthiest black businessman in the entire state. However, rather than resting on his laurels, Mr. Coleman wanted to realize his lifelong dream, which was to help own and operate a textile factory purely for black operatives. At that time in our history, black workers did not operate textile machines. Mr. Coleman believed that he could fund a mill solely with black financing and could open that mill just to black workers and produce quality cloth and dispel the old notions as to the ability of black textile workers. With the help of some of his friends, he began to raise money for a manufacturing company to be erected in Concord. He soon found, however, that financing was difficult, and he acquired help from the white business community, and particularly from the Duke family in Durham. With their help, the plans for the mill were set into motion, and the cornerstone was laid with full Masonic rites. Although the mill opened about the turn of the century, and Mr. Coleman was assisted by a distinguished board of directors who represented the leading business and civic leaders in the African American community, the mill was not an immediate success. It did produce quality cloth, but it was always undercapitalized and only produced a small profit. He was well on the way of making it a success, however, when illness caused his untimely death in 1904, and the business failed. After the property was subject to foreclosure, it was eventually purchased by J.W. Cannon and became plant number 9 in the Cannon chain of mills. A marker honoring Mr. Coleman and his accomplishments has been erected along the boulevard now named for him, Warren C. Coleman Boulevard in Concord. Although Cabarrus County was well known for its textile mills, it also became equally well known for its efforts to advance the rehabilitation of young juvenile offenders. A Concord newspaper editor, James P. Cook, who was a Mount Pleasant native, became interested in the cause of juvenile justice when he reported a session of court in Concord at which a young offender who had been convicted of stealing $1.30 was led from the courtroom shackled to an older and much more hardened criminal. Mr. Cook determined to make it his lifetime effort to lead a crusade to reform the juvenile justice system. He began to secure support from organized women's groups throughout the state of North Carolina, and was able with their help to persuade the legislature to charter the first training school for North Carolina. A reluctant legislature agreed to pass the bill when it was learned that the school would be named in honor of Confederate General Stonewall Jackson, who was a hero of the South at that time. The first students were received into the school in 1909, and it continued to grow through the years, attracting young offenders across North Carolina. In addition to academic courses, they were taught additional skills, such as learning new farming methods and even learning the printer's trade. Many of them worked on the school newspaper, The Uplift, under the supervision of Mr. Cook himself. An historical marker honoring the location of that first training school in North Carolina was erected in 1952 on the Old Charlotte Road. 2 years later, a companion marker was erected honoring the life and achievements of James P. Cook. Mr. Cook's marker is prominently located on the corner of South Union and Corbin Avenue in Concord, near the location of the present Cabarrus County Courthouse. The story of textile manufacturing is the central focus of the economic history of Cabarrus County during the century following the end of the war between the states. When J.D. Buchanan died in 1921, he left an empire of textile mills which were producing quality textile products famous throughout the world. He left that empire in the hands of his capable young son, Charles Albert Cannon, whom everyone said was born to be a textile man. Mr. Cannon revolutionized the textile industry, bringing the new innovation of nationwide advertising campaigns in modern popular magazines. He brought together all the mills of the Cannon Group to form the giant Cannon Mills Company, which he felt helped the company weather the storm of the Great Depression, helped it remain open, and still be able to report a small profit during those dismal days. Mr. Cannon was involved in numerous civic enterprises during his long and profitable life. He supported education in every form, not only in the local schools of Kannapolis and Cabarrus County, but in small colleges and universities throughout the state of North Carolina. With the encouragement of his wife, Ruth Cannon, he began and completed the renovation of downtown Kannapolis in a distinctive Williamsburg style of architecture. From his youngest days, Charles Cannon supported quality health care for his employees and his neighbors. With the support of his mother, Mariella Boss Cannon, Mr. Charles Cannon supported legislation to build a modern hospital for the people of Cabarrus County. He continued to support that hospital financially throughout the rest of his life. Seems especially fitting then that the historical marker erected to honor his memory and his long list of accomplishments was erected and placed in front of the site of that original small Cabarrus Memorial Hospital, which has now grown into the world-class medical facility, Carolinas Medical Center Northeast. Mr. Cannon's marker was authorized in 1995, but erected in 1996 as a part of the celebration of Concord's bicentennial year. Although the mills have closed, the spirit that made this a special place continues to flourish. Another man of unlimited vision, David Murdoch, is now leading Kannapolis and Cabarrus County into a new century in which biotechnology will light the way. We're glad you've joined us for this brief look at the historical markers of Cabarrus County, this thumbnail sketch of our history, the story of this special place, this Cabarrus. We hope you'll join us again real soon.